Taking a seated position upon your mat. Just as we start almost every practice, take a moment to feel your sitting bones connected to the earth, to acclimate and calm your nervous system by looking around your space, reassuring the nervous system that you're safe. Remember that hardworking nervous system is checking for safety and looking for danger 4 times every second. So we want to make sure that it gets a message of calm before we even begin our practice, because if we're distracted with what's happening outside of ourselves, it will be very difficult to listen and watch for signals as they arise from within. Another little fact to remember is that in the human body, 80% of nerves are bringing in information from outside of ourselves, and 20% are bringing information from inside you up to your brain to be acknowledged. So we do have to soften some of the exterior chaotic information in order to even have enough bandwidth to pay attention to that 20% of signals that are being sent that bring information about what's happening inside. So tamping down or dimming the bandwidth on information arriving from outside of self is a perfect precursor to a present state of mind. You might even touch the exterior of your body, just helping to define. You've got a little busy mind this morning, maybe connecting some energy to the skull can help to slow those ruminating thoughts. And with practice, you might start to notice that as you begin to bring your attention inward, you're immediately receiving information and feedback about the breath. And the moment that we pay attention to the breath, it seems to naturally deepen and lengthen. That's exactly what we're looking for to establish that slow, easy metronome of the breath. Smooth, deep, with nice, easy pauses between the inhale and the exhale. And we'll carry that cadence with us as we begin to move the body. Let's begin by just taking one leg and we'll lengthen it out just toward one side. And you're going to place that leg wherever it just feels comfortable, wherever you start to feel a gentle tug on the inside edge of your thigh. And that could be anywhere, big range of motion, but we're starting with small sensations. Level the pelvis, sometimes that means shifting a little from left to right. And we'll take a big sun breath with those arms float overhead. And hinge forward from the hip creases. Let your gaze fall just below the horizon before you, or maybe 2 to 3 feet in front of your fingertips. And we'll just be with this sensation in our one-legged forward fold to notice where we feel the greatest increase in sensation. Maybe it's the low back, maybe it's your hamstrings, could be your inner thigh. While we're here, let's just gently alternate between pointing the toes of the lengthened leg and flexing the heel. Pointing and flexing. Pointing and flexing. And then relaxing the lengthened leg's foot. We're going to press through the ball of the foot. So we're pressing through the widest part of your foot and feeling the toes stretch away from one another and lengthen. Walk your fingertips back toward your sitting bones. So you're sitting up nice and tall. We're going to take the lengthened leg, bend at the knee, and point those toes back behind you. Now, for most of us, the pelvis is going to be oriented at an angle. We'll drop one set of fingers to the earth behind your ground or beside your grounded sitting bone. And in that lifted, lighter sitting bone, we'll place our fingertips into the hip crease and just proceed to breathe just maybe 3 to 5 hip lifts. Remember, the shoulders, neck, and head are pretty much resting in stillness here. This rotation occurs in the hip joints. Let your breath find a natural pattern here, and after anywhere from 3 to 5 breaths, we'll settle the pelvis. We'll turn our heart center toward the side of the body that has the toes pointing behind you. Closed twist. Lengthen through the crown of your head and just find a nice, easy, closed twist. And then from here, we'll spin the hands all the way to the other side into an open twist. And in the position of this open twist, with our Z pose legs, we'll just create a couple little yogi push-ups here, staying mindful of how those elbows bend. We want them to move straight back toward the pelvis and have them not flare out to the sides. Lengthen the arms and come all the way back to our start posture. We'll take the toes that are pointing behind us, lift the knee and spin that ankle around and lengthen the leg that was bent. Coming into our one-legged position on the other side. We'll take a big sun breath. And just fall forward at the heart center, hinging through the hips. Let your gaze find its natural resting place as the neck remains a natural extension of the spine. We just pause here to notice where you're feeling a heightened sensation here. The back underneath of the extended leg, on the inner thigh, or maybe it's in your low back. And it could be many other spaces, depending on if you have an injury that's a little weaker today. Sitting into the breath. Walk those handprints back toward the hips to stack the shoulders, neck and head over the pelvis, and our lengthened leg, lift the knee, bend, and send those toes back behind you. You're gonna feel one hip get a little lighter than the other. Throw your kickstand hand down and place your fingertips into the hip crease on the side of the pelvis with toes pointed behind you. 3 to 5 hip lifts here. Take your time. Notice where you activate. Hopefully it's closer to the core and less about engaging the thighs. The next time your pelvis is back to a more neutral posture, we'll take our closed twist, turning your heart center toward a leg that has toes behind you. You can make a bind with your fingers wherever it feels comfortable. It's just an easy twist. It's a closed twist, so there's a little more tension involved here. You can release some of that tension simply by lengthening up through the crown. Breathe into your rotated vertebrae. And then we'll spin past neutral and all the way to an open twist. Palms and fingers dropping to the earth, and you're rotating to the opposite side wall. And then here we'll add just a couple yogi push-ups, bending and extending at the elbows. A little bit of a wake-up call for the arms, shoulders, and hands. And then we'll rotate back to neutral. Toes that are spun back behind you are gonna spin around to the front. And I'm gonna take a little different expression of easy pose after that hip opening. Stacking one ankle on top of the other. It always amazes me that if you fiddle around just a bit here, if your hips are open to this configuration, of course, that's the primary consideration, but it's amazing to me how the ankle bones fit right in next to one another. And of course, that only comes once the hips are open enough to achieve this posture. So not a goal to reach, just kind of an interesting experience when you get to that point. In this position, if you're not comfortable with the legs, with the ankles stacked, come into cobbler's pose, just bringing the bottoms of your feet into alignment. If your knees and hips are resisting, the stacking position isn't going to be comfortable. So just go ahead and transition into cobbler's pose. And then from either posture, you can take a gentle forward hinge. Hands resting onto the earth or palms gently resting on the inside edge of your knees. Just remember, there's not a lot of downward pressure here if your palms are resting onto the inside edge of your knees. It's light and your core is active. Inhale slowly, and we'll bring the knees together, lengthen out both legs with flexed ankles, stack shoulders, neck, and head directly over the pelvis. We're going to plant our extended arms with your heels of your hands close to your sitting bones. This is Dandasana, staff pose. Very simple to look at, and it feels like it's a pretty basic organization of the body. But as you press the back of your legs into the earth and hold the shoulders, neck, and head directly over the hips, it's a posture that can take you into low back fatigue rather quickly. If you're feeling like you're ready for a little extra challenge here, you can remove those heels of the hands and take a big sun breath, drawing energy into your heart. You can tap those hands back to the earth and just keep taking sun breaths. In some ways, having the arms in motion takes your attention away from the fact that your core and low back are starting to feel the load. But you can always place those hands and arms back to give a little extra support to your core. The next time that your hands and arms float all the way overhead, we'll take a forward fold. Hands can drop to the top of your shins to the earth on either side is a little deeper forward fold. But focus on keeping that heart center leading the way towards the tops of your feet. You want to avoid the shoulders, excuse me, you want to avoid the shoulders leading and the heart center collapsing. If you're finding this difficult to measure, take those hands, place them behind the tailbone, which will naturally retract the shoulders and force you to lead with your heart center. Another really effective way to deepen your forward fold is to keep a little micro bend in the knees and dig those heels actively into the earth. This activates the underside of the legs from the thighs all the way down to the calves, so that when you relax the back of your legs, you might find that the heart center drops into gravity a little deeper. Looking to challenge length on the back side of the body. Inhale slowly, come back up. We're going to bend one leg at the knee until the footprint rests flat to the earth. We're going to take that bent leg's footprint and bring it out a little further from the midline of your body. Ideally, that knee would be resting outside the space of your shoulder, because we're going to take the hands and arms all the way overhead. And we're going to see how far we can come in our forward bend with one leg bent at the knee and the footprint resting flat. Now, when the shoulders, neck, and head come forward, the natural tendency is for that hip joint to want to externally rotate to get out of the way. We're not going to let it. We're going to use our inner thigh to draw the knee into the shoulder. So we're working our inner thigh, but we're getting a nice forward flexion. You might feel like you're getting a knot right in your hip crease. Inhale slowly, come on back up. And we're going to rotate the heart center toward the bent knee. And you can bring that footprint back closer in if you'd like at this point. So you can wrap around that knee. You can also use the thigh bone as a wedge, so either bind. And again, it's probably a natural tendency to want to lean the shoulders, neck, and head back here, but we're going to resist that temptation and let the crown just rise straight up. Draw in the navel center. Couple different binds you can use here. Unwind and come back to neutral. We'll lengthen out the bent leg. We'll take a two-legged forward fold. Second visit here. Dig those heels in, get the PNF stretching going, so you're activating the calves and hamstrings, and then soften the resistance and maybe get the sensation of your shoulders, neck, head, and heart dropping a little deeper into your forward fold. Inhale slowly, rise up through the shoulders, neck, and head. Opposite knee bends. Footprint falls flat, footprint jumps out to the side so that it's outside the width of your shoulder. We'll take those hands and arms all the way overhead, lean forward, feel that natural tendency for the knee to want to fall to the side. Use your inner thigh to bully that knee up to the shoulder. Two things going on here. We're holding the width or the length of the leg into the shoulder. We're also revisiting our forward fold. Inhale, rise up. This is where you can let your footprint slide back in a bit as we prepare for rotation. You can loop your elbow crease around the raised knee, or you can take the elbow on the outside edge. Whichever bind allows you to lengthen up through the crown. Deep rotation. Check in with the breath. Also keep in mind that extended leg before you is still active. It's not falling into relaxation here, it's active. We've got energy channeled in many directions in this posture. Unwind the rotation. Come on back. We're going to make our way into a supine posture. You can do that in two different ways. You can roll down through the side body, or you can do a rocking chair and just land straight back, whatever feels like it's the right transition for your body. And of course, the first thing we do in this supine position as we find our way to bridge is settle the pelvis. Might involve picking it up and setting it back down, and then press into your footprints, sitting bones, elbows, and back of the head, lifting the mid back and just setting it back down, and then organizing the back of the head to rest to the mat so that your chin and forehead are somewhat parallel to the earth. Let the knees sway just a bit. Just want to make sure we're beginning our exercises from a place of relaxation. Coming into neutral, let's pick up one footprint at a time while maintaining the 90-degree bend in the knees. And we can place our hands on the backs of the thighs and draw the knees down toward either side of the rib cage. And with this pelvic tilt, more than likely, you're going to feel your low back pressing into the earth. This is happy baby pose. Depending on bone length, you might be able to take your index fingers and wrap them around the big toes and cap with the thumbs. The only advantage to this bind is that now you have your arm strength to draw those knees a little deeper into either side of the rib cage. Your footprints are flat to the ceiling. Ooh, that feels good on the low back. You can add a little side to side sway here. Do check in with the neck and head to make sure that chin stays
gently neutral, it's not reaching up for the sky. And then coming into stillness, just finding a little deeper expression of happy baby. And then from here, we'll just experiment and see how it might feel to lengthen one leg. Now you can do this with your hands resting on the backs of the thighs. You're just sending energy up through your footprint. Or perhaps you can even maintain the peace fingers wrapped around the big toe. So whatever feels like it's working for your body. The goal here is simply to lengthen one leg and then the other into this V-shaped form. It's not straight overhead, it's usually a little more off to the side. From happy baby to lengthening one leg and then the other. And if you found that to be somewhat pleasurable, you might try lengthening both legs. Drive the navel center, use your transverse abdominis, and slowly let the heels drift apart. Now you can be holding on to the backs of the thighs. The advantage of holding on to the backs of the thighs is you can let your fingers curl around to the inner thighs, and you can literally use the weight of your hands and arms to draw the ankles even further apart. If you're holding onto the big toes, you may find that there's an edge because your arms are only so long that you can no longer let the ankles drift further apart. So play with where the hands are going to rest in relation to how much inner thigh stretch your body is going to give you today. I'm keeping my ankles flexed. You can also point the toes, but you may not get quite as much of a stretch sensation in the inner thighs. And that could actually be valuable for you. So flexing or pointing, fact, maybe both. You can even draw circles with your ankles. And then we'll place the hands on the outside edge of the thighs because we're going to use the strength of the arms, not just the activation of the inner thighs, to bring those footprints back skyward. We just don't want to tug on the inner thighs after such a deep stretch. So let your hands and arms assist. Legs up the wall, ankles flexed, legs vertical. Just take a moment to feel and sense blood flow back down to the hips, maybe pooling around the pelvis. It's just such a therapeutic restorative posture. You can use your fingertips. It's a nice little lymphatic touch. And then from here, let's place one footprint back down to the earth with a bent knee. We'll focus on a little hamstring stretch on the leg that's still extended skyward. You can begin to draw the toes toward the crown of your head and use your hands and fingers in any way that helps to facilitate a little deeper stretch here. Generally, the hamstrings are strong and tight. So as soon as you get to your maximum edge, it's very likely that you're going to start to feel some shivering and shaking. That's okay. It's just telling you that you're at your maximum edge. Rest in that space and breathe. Now from here, we can go into reclining big toe as an option. If you're really feeling like the hamstrings are tight and you want to remain here, feel free to do so. But another option is to hold on to the outside edge of the thigh or reconnect the peace fingers and tap with the big thumb to the big toe. And we're going to let the raised leg drop to the side. Now, instead of having your resting leg with knee bent and footprint flat, you may find a little more of a counterbalance by lengthening that leg to the earth and also extending your resting fingertips away from your heart to the opposite side. So we have the resting limbs as counterbalances. Spin your toes to point down toward the earth and just let gravity take you into reclining big toe. Don't forget to breathe here. Bend your bound leg. Release the bind and bring that footprint back to the earth. And we'll bring both footprints back to the earth. Let the knees sway side to side. Now, just for fun, we're gonna come into reclining bound angle. Because we wanna measure if we can sense one leg being a little more open to this deep external rotation than the other. And just knowing that it wouldn't be all pure magic if the leg we just stretched fell a little further into gravity. Again, you can use your hands on the outside edge of your thighs to assist bringing the knees back together and your footprints flat. And we'll raise the opposite leg. And you can bind behind the back of the thigh and slowly start tracking the toes over the crown of your head, just in that general direction. You can make the bind to the back of the thigh. Or if it's naturally within your reach, wrap peace fingers around big toe and cap with the thumb. Remember, some of the potential to be able to make this bind, actually quite a bit of it, arises from bone length. It's not just all about flexibility. We're using the arms either behind the thigh or attached to the big toe to deepen our hamstring stretch. And then from here, externally rotate the hip and let the toes start to drift away from the midline of the spine. Opposite arm extends to the side for counterbalance, and the resting leg extends fully with heel resting to the earth for counterbalance. The point here is to see if you can release the hip joint into gravity. It's not about trying to effort here. It's about breathing and softening in reclining big toe. Bring that leg that's bound all the way back to center and slowly plant your footprint. Bring both footprints back to the earth, knees raised. We're gonna take the footprints about hip distance apart in our bridge pose and allow the knees to fall all the way into gravity, fully let go to one side. Probably one hip is gonna pop up off the earth, it's okay. We're just looking for where's the space that I can release the weight of my legs to gravity and just let them kind of hang out. You can turn your gaze in the direction opposite that your knees fell. Just take a few moments to let your body sink into the earth. Notice where you're holding tension and see if just for a few moments you can release it. Engage deep core, bring the bottoms of your feet back flat, neutralize your gaze, and we'll let the knees fall to the opposite side. Making any final adjustments so that your body feels comfortable here. And of course, you can turn your gaze away from your bent knees. And once you arrive with the shape of your body, where are you still holding tension? Where are you able to soften? Face, jaw, neck, shoulders, arms, hips, thighs, knees. Where is tension? Keep the breath flowing. And then bring those knees back skyward. Neutralize your gaze. One last time, we're gonna pick up both legs, legs up the wall. And then front legs up the wall, cross one ankle over the other. And let's take our hands and lace fingers behind the back of your head. Letting the elbows fall into gravity. It's a nice stretch for the shoulders. Having the ankles crossed deactivates the quadriceps, the front of the thighs. And that brings us right into preparation for some yogi sit-ups. Because we don't want the quadriceps doing all the work, so we're putting them into service to keep the ankles skyward. So we can focus on the transverse abdominis and the inner and outer obliques. Feel your low back start to float down toward the earth as your shoulders, neck, and head gently lift. Now your gaze is gonna stay either on the ceiling or toward the tops of your feet, and then slowly rest back down. Low back presses into the earth, shoulders, neck, and head float. It's a very small range of motion. It's a somatic exercise, and that by definition means that you're going to release all accumulated tension as soon as the back of the head and the upper back is supported by the earth. You may feel the urge to inhale or exhale as you lift. I think those of you who naturally want to inhale as you lift will find that a little more challenging. Maybe that's your goal, to activate the TA while simultaneously activating the diaphragm. Those are opposing energies, and it's going to be a little more of a challenge. The next time your back of your head is resting to the earth, uncross the ankles and recross the opposite. Continue on with maybe 3 to 5 more yogi sit-ups. We're doing them very slow and controlled so that we can feel and sense the deep activation of the core in this practice. Elbows are soft, the weight of the head is resting heavy into your hands. The muscles on your face are relaxed. And of course, your quadriceps, shins, ankles, and feet are soft as well. The periphery is relaxed, the deep core working hard. The next time that you lift, let's hold. Draw down the navel center, let your head be heavy into your hands. Feel your core really working hard here. We're in stillness, but gravity's effects are still active. So it's a lot of work for the deep core. Draw in the navel center. Please don't stiffen your neck and head. Relax, let the head be heavy. Whew. And then place the back of your head to the earth, release your hands. We'll uncross the ankles and let the heels drop. Draw your bent legs close into your belly, letting the tops of your thighs find your chest. You can rock a bit from left to right here. Feeling that low back massage. And coming into neutral, one more stretch before we leave our supine posture. I love deep rotations here. Bring those knees back to a 90-degree bend, and let's cross left thigh over right. Bring your ankles close together. So we've got a nice tight line of energy along the central axis of the spine. Left knee is on top. We'll extend both arms straight up to the ceiling, shoulder distance apart. And then we'll stack the right elbow over the left, wrap the forearms, and bring the elbows down toward the tops of your thighs. This is reclining eagle pose. We're letting those hands drop right down toward the nose. Ankles are held together. There's very little space between the inner thighs. But in this version, the core is rather soft. Now, if you want to add motion to this, push your footprints and hands away from the center, and then bring the knees and elbows close together. Most of you will naturally inhale as the hands and feet move away from one another. And exhale as the knees and elbows come closer together. Reclining eagle pose in movement. Coming back to neutral, unwrap the elbows and arms. Rest your hands out to your sides. And then with left knee still stacked atop right, gonna roll the knees to the earth to the right. And this creates a nice deep stretch from the outside edge of your left knee, all the way up through the left hip, and then all the way up through the left shoulder. Try to keep your hands and arms as close to the earth in a big wide embrace at shoulder height. It's as close as you can, balance it out so there's a lot of relaxation here. And you can turn your head towards your left fingertips if you want to take the rotation all the way to the base of the skull. Unwrap the legs, press that right leg long, hop the left leg over the right leg, and come back to our bridge pose to start. Realign the spine, pick up the hips, pick up the mid back, pick up and rest the back of the head to the earth. Whew, that was so deep, there's a little shaking going on. And from here, we'll build our reclining eagle pose on the opposite side, picking up both footprints, 90-degree bend in the knees. Right leg stacks over left. Ankles drawn together, maybe that wrap if you can make it. My toes want to cramp when I try that. So I'm probably not gonna hold it too long. Just bring the ankles close together. Both arms extend skyward, and since we have the right knee over the left, we'll take the left elbow over the right, wrap the forearms and fingers, and press your elbows down toward the tucks of your thighs. Easy breaths here, shoulders soft. And then you can start to place it into motion if you like, bringing the knees and elbows further apart, and then drawing them together. Strong core. Stay in alignment with your breathing. Watch the back of the neck here. When the elbows and knees come together, you might even decide to pick up the back of your head and round through the thoracic and lumbar vertebrae rather than letting the neck compress in the back. It's all about what feels comfortable to your body. It's also going to add a little more resistance to the exercise of the core here. Choose accordingly. And then next time the back of your head hits the mat, unwind the arms, take them all the way out to your sides. Right leg is stacked over left, and knees and ankles are both going to fall to your left. Find that delicate balance where your right arm can stay close to the earth and your legs intertwined can fall. This stretch starts really deep in the right outer thigh, comes across the lateral right side of the body all the way to the right shoulder. The hip in rotation, the whole pelvis in rotation really stretches the right side of the body long. And you can take your gaze over your right fingertips. Just softening into gravity here. Notice where you might be holding or clenching and soften accordingly. And lengthen the left leg, hop the right leg over the left back to center. Both footprints flat to the earth. And from here, let's roll over onto our belly into a prone position, propped up on your forearms. Placing your elbows in front of the shoulders gently, forearms parallel, palms flat, fingers spread wide.
This is a low cobra or sphinx pose. The most important aspect of this is to make sure that the spine and neck don't fall between the shoulders. Use your deep core, the transverse abdominis, to pick up. It's gonna create a little more intense sensation in your lumbar vertebrae, but that's exactly what we're looking for here. A nice long stretch from the pubic bone to the notch at the base of your throat. We can stretch across the upper back here. Let's take the left palm and fingers and slide it a little longer in front of the right hand. And we'll pick up the right hand and take your right fingers underneath your left shoulder. So we're rotating the shoulder girdle. It would be very tempting to let the top of your head drop down in front of your right shoulder, but we're gonna keep the head as a natural extension of the spine. We're just rotating the shoulder girdle here. Your gaze is looking out toward your right fingertips that went underneath the left shoulder. Unroll, come back, and now the right hand's gonna reach out and match the left hand. We're bracing with the strength of the right side of the body so you can pick up the left hand, thread the palm and fingers underneath the right shoulder, rotate the shoulder girdle, hold the weight of your head as a natural extension. Breathing in, breathing out. And then with strong core, we're gonna bring handprints back to their respective sides of the body on either side of the rib cage. Make sure the shoulders are pressed down and away from the ears. And we'll slowly roll up into cobra, come only as high as your body is comfortable. And then from this cobra, we'll tuck the toes under, hinge through the hips, lift the pelvis, in slow motion, make your way from that cobra pose into downward facing dog. We're just slowly peeling our bodies away from the earth. Feel the hips light. Guide the hips toward the back edge of your mat. Use your deep core strength to lighten the weight of your handprints into the earth. With an inhale, walk your footprints forward toward the hands to a space where you can rise into halfway lift. We stop knees here in halfway lift. We'll reverse swan dive. Letting the hands and arms reach all the way overhead. And once those hands clasp together, we're gonna bring the palms across one another, loop the thumbs, and just transition into Garuda Mudra. We're standing tall in mountain pose with the thumbs laced around one another, palms facing your heart and fingers spread wide. Garuda Mudra. Garuda translates in Sanskrit to eagle. Feel the long, wide, strong wingspan of the eagle protecting the energy of your heart. From Garuda Mudra, lengthen the arms all the way overhead. Exhale, swan dive, forward hinge. Reaching down to the earth in a full forward bend. As always, if the hamstrings are tight and they're talking to you, soften the knees. We want to direct this stretch into the lumbar vertebrae and the quadratus lumborum. Feel the heaviness of the shoulders, neck, and head drawing space into the lumbar vertebrae. Just remember that if as your knees bend, they should not be swaying out to the sides. Check the position of your feet to make sure those knees bend straight forward. And then inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, let's return to downward facing dog.
Anchor the shoulders before you step back. Engage upper back muscles, feel them hugging your upper back. Perhaps feeling your toes light and your heels becoming heavier. Inhale to plank. And I'll give you the option, don't forget you have the option of a fully unsupported plank or the option of lowering your knees to the mat. We're gonna come into a side plank. If you're floating, you'll let your heels drop to the earth and let one hand float skyward. If you're kneeling, one set of toes will spin to the side and the other leg will lengthen as you open. So choose which side plank you wish to practice, floating or supported. And then come back to your center plank and take it to the other side. Lots of shaking going on here. Come back to downward facing dog. If you lowered your knees for your plank. Same transition, just back to downward facing dog. Roll one knee to the mat, followed by the other, this time with toes pointed behind you. Soften hips to the heels, taking some of the pressure off of the strength of your arms and sinking into extended child's pose. We practiced a little earlier, we practiced yogi sit-ups. Now we're gonna take on yogi push-ups. From child's pose, lengthen your arms as long forward as you can at shoulder distance apart. And then we'll just roll up, picking up the hips and coming into hands and knees. Just practice transitioning from child's pose to tabletop for a breath or two. Holding strong through the shoulder joints. If you're really liking how this feels, you can skip the yogi push-ups. But keep in mind, a yogi push-up by design is a much smaller range of motion. We're not trying to bump our chest to the earth. It's all about holding strong across the upper back, through the shoulder joints, and through those bending elbows. If you really want to add intensity, you could try balancing into your fingertips, all 10 fingerprints. Drop back into child's pose with the palms lifted. Rise into tabletop with the palms lifted. Bend the elbows all the while with the palms lifted. And return to child's pose. You could even do that every other repetition, letting your palms rest flat for one yogi push-up. And then once the hips float back to the heels, lift the palms, balance into your fingerprints. Steady through the shoulders, strong through the elbows. However you want to time that and practice. Sometimes it's nice to give the fingers a little bit of strength training as well. Once those fingertips are exhausted, go back to palms flat. And if your arms and shoulder and core are really spent, just return to child's pose and hang out here. Coming back to child's pose together, we'll rest here for one deep, even breath. And then with an inhale, we'll come into hands and knees. And we'll step one footprint all the way forward between your handprints, coming into a low lunge. I'm gonna walk that footprint a little further forward than my handprints, and then slowly guide the hips forward until my leg behind me is almost extended all the way long. And we'll just dance a little back and forth here. Your hands can be supported on the mat, or if your props, if your blocks are within reach, those are lovely to use here. They're not necessary, but they're handy. And watch the tracking of your hips. Whichever foot is forward, the hips tend to want to move to the opposite side of the pelvis when they track back. If you notice the hips tracking diagonally, self-correct so that the pelvis is sliding directly forward, parallel between the two long edges of your mat as you move into this deep, low lunge. Coming back to your weight onto that back knee will pick up. I specifically said pick up because I don't want drag. I'm gonna use my core strength to pick up and lift the leg that was forward to the back. We're gonna bring the hips back toward the heels, returning to child's pose. Sighing breath. And then return to hands and knees. And we're gonna pick up, we're not gonna drag the opposite footprint all the way forward. And start your dance, your motion forward and back in this low lunge. Nice easy breaths with or without blocks. We're more focused on the pathway of the hips forward and back. You want to keep the motion true, even though we're in a split stance here with one foot forward and knee down in the back. And with a nice strong core, we'll pick up the forward foot and release hips to the heels in child's pose. Inhale through hands and knees. We'll bring one foot forward, followed by the other, making the transition to standing. And we'll let the shoulders, neck, and head drop into gravity. We did some nice strength work and stretching. We'll finish with another forward fold here. Reverse swan dive, rise up, standing upward salute. And then let hands fall to your side in mountain pose. Today is Halloween, and that always makes me think of trees without leaves. So today we're gonna practice a Halloween spooky tree pose. And just to make things a little more exciting, I'm gonna place one of my blocks onto the floor. And I'm gonna set my foundational foot onto that block and come into standing upon it. This is completely optional. We would be balancing if we just put the foot that has nowhere to go on top of the footprint that's on the block or on the earth. It's really more of a head game. It's no different than practicing standing on the floor, but it can sense out your head a little bit. You can come into, whoa, come into your balance pose. Start with hands to the heart and then maybe send those spooky branches out into the Halloween night. Find a focal point to rest your gaze, relax and breathe. And then slowly deconstruct. Maybe if you're standing on a block, let that leg swing a little bit. That's such a nice psoas release. And then stepping back down, terra firma. Shake it out. If you accumulate any tension in that posture, make sure to let it go. And then we'll bring our balance to the opposite footprint, either on the earth or standing on the block. Find your balance, obviously, I'm struggling today. And then find your posture, build the roots and trunk, and add those spooky branches. Find your focal point to rest your gaze and breathe. Deconstruct, take your time. Again, if you're standing on the block and you want a little bit of a psoas release, let that leg swing just a bit. And then step back to the earth. We'll make our way down to the earth. And we're gonna return to a supine posture. If you have your blocks with you and you'd like to use them for final relaxation, I'm placing one block on its widest side, flat to the mat. And I'll be resting my shoulders across that space with the second block on its tallest position, standing behind it. With your sitting bones just a short distance, make sure that your upper back is supported by the flat block, and then place the tall block just so that the edge sits at the base of the occipital ridge of the skull. And once you have that in position, I always like to lift my hips and set them back down. And then we can position the limbs. If you're using the blocks, I would recommend taking your heels a little wider. It just gives you a stronger foundation with less rocking from side to side. Of course, the alternative is to just rest your body supine against the earth, noticing all the points of contact, relaxing the muscles of your face, feeling the weight of your body sink into the earth. Perhaps feeling and sensing your lower abdomen rise and fall with the breath naturally. The next 7 days are going to give us plenty of opportunity to aggravate or even suspend our breath. The challenge I offer to you in the next 7 days is to stay consciously attentive to your breathing. The brain and the breath are intimately and directly connected. They cannot be separated. If you turn on the news and your mind is disrupted, so will the breath be aggravated. Anytime something disrupts your attention and creates activation, come back to your mantra, I am breathing in, I am breathing out. I control my inner peace. Before moving your body, in your mind's eye, make a conscious decision of which part of your body will move first. Plot your path from supine lying to seated. Consciously choosing which limb will move, how deeply the core will be activated. Take your time. If you want to give that variation of easy pose a second try, stacking the ankles one atop the other,
noticing how the two fit together seamlessly. Of course, that's dependent upon whether the hips and knees are gonna be happy in this posture. It's just an opportunity to try something different. If it doesn't work, if it doesn't feel good, just go back to easy pose. We're gonna take one hand, probably your dominant hand, and we're simply going to create a soothing rhythm. Remember, the nervous system loves rhythm and music. Tap your thumb to your index finger, middle finger, ring finger, little finger. Tap, 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 tap. If you want, you can do it with both hands simultaneously. Tap, 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 tap. I control my inner peace. Nothing can upset me unless I give it permission to upset me. We have choices as to how we react to anything that comes into our present moment. Give your best effort to stay with the breath, to create that rhythmic motion of your fingers. I control my inner peace. We'll complete our practice by lengthening the arms, drawing in. It's harvest season, so imagine harvesting energy, capturing it in those delicate hands and bringing it right down to the heart. Namaste. Take a moment to notice how you're feeling after giving conscious attention to your body, to your breath, to refresh your spirit.